Train to Busan is a zombie apocalypse movie. Let us take a closer look at this genre. Zombies first appeared in cinema in the early 1930s and were the victims of Haitian magicians' voodoo exotics. In the films White Zombie 1932, I Walked with a Zombie 1943, and many others, these are living people, completely subject to evil will. This subsection of horror was considered low quality, even when compared to movies about mummies and vampires. The second-rate plot cliché dragged on until 1968, when George Romero's Night of the Living Dead came out. We can say that the new zombie was born, and at the same time the concept of the zombie apocalypse arose. And yet, until the 2000s, the reputation of zombie films was on the verge between cheap horror and outright trash. And suddenly, zombies, along with their post-apocalyptic stories, broke out of the ghettoized areas of cultures, sci-fi, underground, video games. Why did such a wild plot become such a running one? In the very concept of the modern zombie implies the irreversibility of its presence. In terms of its mechanics, the zombie invasion is a global epidemic that first strikes large cities that are familiar to the moviegoers. This epidemic inevitably leads to the collapse of civilization. The goal and task of the hero of the zombie film is not to return the world to its original state, but to adapt its psyche and irreversibly changed world. In this way, zombie attacks are fundamentally different from the frightening but local and reversible invasions of aliens, radioactive ants, and other Godzillas. Zombie movies are not limited to exploiting basic animal fears. The zombie apocalypse involves a set of actual anxieties generated by the excess of uncertainty. These are not just fears, but unresolved informational contradictions. Let us consider different types of fear connected to zombie. Fear of a global catastrophe in any form, biologically based fear of the sick and the dead, enhanced by the practice of carefully isolating death from the living. Fear of microbes, epidemics, radiation, chemistry, GMOs, that is the fear of something foreign invading the body. Fear of cannibalism and cannibals, fear of alien, incomprehensible cultures before which the tolerant world feels defenseless. Fear of irrational violence, street crime, as the TV presenter put it in Night of the Living Dead. Fear of xenophobia, racism, and other prejudice. Fears of madness, non-conformity, zombies look like crazy outcasts, cannibals, but the survivors act alone against the society of zombies. They are alone in the crowd. And vice versa, the fear of conformity, the fear of being one of 6 or more obedient billions. A religious fear of retribution involved in films through television, preachers and fanatics, fear of destabilization of society, anarchy, helplessness of the government in the face of global challenges. The dependence of the individual on in the infrastructure of civilization, the lack of control over their lives, the fear of state violence, and so on. A popular online resource that deconstructs media stereotypes describes the advantages of a zombie apocalypse over the ordinary life of the city dwellers. These advantages give the viewer an emotional release, but also create an experimental personal testing ground. We can say that zombie topic is associated with the following: justified violence, accessible even to a pacifist humanist, freedom from consumerism and work, everything is free and available. Instead of ultra-fasting multitasking, the simplicity and certainty of life tasks, freedom from moral and social conventions, the absence of a complex system of power. Post-apocalyptic communities have a primitive structure and cannot spread power over a distance. A zombie film is always a socio-psychological experiment. Inside the big experiment on the world, here it is a micro-experiment on a group of random people in mortal danger. At the same time, the retribution for unproductive behavior is swift and simple. And even character dies and dooms others to death. Everyone can become a victim of such a karmic influence. The viewer himself takes the place of the hero who has learned the lesson. Zombie movie characters are interchangeable. This is an open model. The zombie model kills a large society and thereby scales reality to the size of an individual. The ideal of individualism, voluntary cooperation, and social contract are being realized. All this makes the zombie model fully adapted for the training of identity described by the German sociologist Niklas Luhmann, for jumping from one behavior model to another in almost laboratory conditions. Without pressure from society, without the rule of law, without social structures, except for the smallest family, friendship, individual mutual assistance, and the largest humanity as an idea. It turns out that the text formed according to the classical zombie model serve on the one hand for the playful living of actual apocalyptic fears, removing uncertainty, and on the other hand they are effective as raw material for the formation of identity through identification with obviously imperfect heroes. The very necessity of the hero of a zombie movie to lose all signs of his former identity and independently create a new one is the most urgent and healthy challenge facing the modern man of modern civilization. The modern world is changing at a speed inaccessible to the old models of education, the old patterns of personality formation. Even people who are 10 years behind the cutting edge of culture are already sometimes shocked and unable to adapt to new conditions. Change of work and even profession, country of residence and other signs previously central to the individual have become almost the norm. Therefore, the therapeutic function of the film is not only and not so much in showing the fears of overcoming them. This is the training of a new identity. According to the precepts of survivalism, this identity is every day ready to pick up its personal alarm backpack with everything you need and leave the house without looking back into a brave new world.